The arrival. The Zephyrians arrived on a Tuesday. Not with fanfare or dramatic announcements, but with the quiet efficiency of apex predators who had done this 1,000 times before. Their crystalline ships materialized above Earth's major cities, at precisely noon GMT, casting prismatic shadows that turned the streets below into kaleidoscopes of color. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Commander Sarah Chen was eating lunch in the International Space Station when the first reports came through. She watched through the cupola window as 12 massive vessels, each the size of Manhattan, phased into existence around Earth's equator. They hung there like geometric nightmares, surfaces shifting between solid and liquid, defying every law of physics humanity thought it understood. The aliens didn't attack immediately. That wasn't their style, as Earth would soon learn. The Zephyrians were collectors, not destroyers. They had conquered 1,700 civilizations across the galaxy through a simple, effective method. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, and integrate the useful populations into their collective. Those who resisted were simply erased from existence, their atoms scattered across the cosmos as a warning to others. For 3 days, the ships did nothing but hover and observe. Every attempt at communication failed. Radio signals bounced off their hulls. Laser transmissions were absorbed without response. Even the ancient Voyager greeting protocols were tried, to no avail. The world held its breath. Militaries mobilized and billions of people stared at the sky, waiting. Then came the message. It wasn't broadcast through any technology humans recognized. Instead, every person on Earth heard it simultaneously, directly in their minds, in their own language. The voice was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold. It simply was. Species, designation Earth human. You have been selected for integration into the Zephyrian collective. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is illogical. You have 72 hours to prepare for peaceful transition. Leaders will report to designated zones for processing. Military assets will be surrendered. This is not a negotiation. The message repeated 3 times, then silence returned. But something had changed. In those moments of psychic contact, humanity had felt the weight of the Zephyrian presence. They were ancient, methodical, and absolutely certain of their superiority. They had done this before, many times, and Earth was just another primitive world to be cataloged and absorbed. World leaders convened emergency sessions. The United Nations held the longest continuous session in its history. Military commanders ran simulation after simulation, each ending the same way. Total defeat within hours. The technology gap was insurmountable. Zephyrian ships had shields that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Their matter conversion beams could turn entire cities into energy. Fighting seemed impossible. But Sarah Chen, floating in her tin can above the world, noticed something the ground observers missed. The Zephyrian ships moved in perfect synchronization. Too perfect. When one adjusted position, they all did, simultaneously, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and it revealed something crucial. They were connected, networked, thinking as one. She grabbed her encrypted communicator and called General Marcus Webb, her former commanding officer who now headed the Joint Task Force. Marcus, I need you to listen carefully. They're a hive mind, but not like insects, more like a massive neural network. Every ship, every Zephyrian, is a node. That's their strength, but it might also be their weakness. Webb's gravelly voice came through mixed with static. Explain. What happens to a network when you introduce chaos into multiple nodes simultaneously? Not destruction, but pure, unpredictable chaos. Humans are good at that. We're messy, illogical, unpredictable, everything they're not. There was a long pause. You're suggesting we weaponize human nature itself? Sarah smiled grimly. I'm suggesting we show them why conquering humanity might be the worst mistake they've ever made. The plan that emerged over the next 48 hours was insane, reckless, and utterly human. Instead of centralized resistance, Earth would respond with complete decentralization. No leaders to capture, no command structure to destroy, just 7 billion individuals acting independently toward a common goal, making Earth too chaotic to integrate. Artists worldwide began creating music specifically designed to be discordant and unpredictable, broadcasting it on all frequencies. Programmers released viruses into their own systems, creating digital chaos. Scientists deliberately published contradictory research. Children were encouraged to draw, sing, and play as loudly and randomly as possible. It was psychological warfare on a planetary scale. The Zephyrians' response came exactly at the 72-hour mark. Beams of light descended from their ships, expecting to find orderly crowds of surrendering humans. Instead, they found flash mobs, protests, festivals, and riots. Not violent resistance, but pure, beautiful chaos. In Mumbai, 1 million people danced to different songs simultaneously. In New York, street artists covered every surface with conflicting mathematical equations. In Tokyo, programmers had turned the city's lights into a seizure-inducing strobe, Ettern. The beams faltered. For the first time in their recorded history, the Zephyrian collective experienced confusion. Their hive mind, designed to process orderly information and predictable responses, struggled to comprehend the maelstrom of human chaos. Each beam that tried to lock onto humans for transport found its targets doing something completely unpredictable. One moment a person was dancing, the next meditating, then screaming, then laughing. High above, Sarah watched the Zephyrian ships begin to drift out of formation. Just slightly at first, barely noticeable, but it was there. The perfect synchronization was breaking down. She activated her emergency beacon, sending a coded message to every resistance cell on Earth. Phase 2. Hit them with everything. What followed wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. Hackers launched digital attacks using code written in emoji and memes. Musicians played concerts where every instrument was deliberately out of tune. Cities turned their entire infrastructure into light shows that spelled out nonsense. The internet became a weapon, flooding any system that tried to connect with it with an endless stream of cat videos, conspiracy theories, and procedurally generated poetry. The Zephyrians tried to adapt. They sent down drones to establish order, but humans responded by being aggressively friendly to them, hugging them, decorating them with paint and glitter, trying to teach them playground games. The drones, programmed to respond to hostility, had no protocols for dealing with chaotic affection. In Berlin, a group of philosophers set up a stage beneath a Zephyrian ship and began debating whether the aliens existed or were just a collective hallucination. The ship actually lowered itself to scan them, trying to understand how beings could question the existence of something directly above them. In Lagos, engineers had rigged the entire city's car alarms to go off in a pattern that changed every 30 seconds. The cacophony was unbearable to human ears, but to the Zephyrian collective consciousness, it was like being forced to solve a puzzle where the pieces kept changing shape. By the end of the first week, something unprecedented happened. A Zephyrian ship sent a new message, this time through conventional radio waves. Request clarification. Human behavior does not match any known patterns. Are you malfunctioning? The response came from a teenager in Sao Paulo who had hacked into the communication system. No, we're just being human. Want to see our memes? What followed was the galaxy's first encounter with the full, unfiltered chaos of human internet culture. Millions of images, videos, and texts flooded the Zephyrian network. Philosophy mixed with shitposts. Shakespeare alongside keyboard cat. The entire sum of human digital culture, in all its contradictory, beautiful, insane glory. The Zephyrian ships began to wobble visibly now. Their perfect formation completely broken. Some rose higher, others descended. One actually started spinning slowly, as if dizzy. Sarah watched from the ISS as humanity's greatest weapon, its absolute refusal to make sense, began to take effect. But the Zephyrians were not defeated yet. They were ancient, adaptable, and had resources beyond Earth's comprehension. As the second week began, they changed tactics. If they couldn't integrate humanity through order, they would try to understand it through observation. Smaller ships deployed, each focusing on individual humans, trying to find patterns in the chaos. That's when Marcus Webb played humanity's ace card. Every military on Earth simultaneously launched what appeared to be an attack, but was actually the opposite. Missiles filled with confetti and glitter, tanks firing paint shells, fighter jets skywriting poetry in dozens of languages. It was warfare as performance art. Violence transformed into absurdity. The Zephyrians' response revealed their growing frustration. For the first time, they used their weapons, but not to destroy. They began trying to freeze sections of cities, in stasis fields, attempting to create pockets of order they could study. But humans trapped in stasis fields didn't stay still in predictable ways. They continued being chaotic, just slower, creating time-delayed chaos that rippled out when the fields dropped. As part one of humanity's resistance came to a close, Earth stood at a crossroads. The Zephyrians hadn't won, but neither had humanity. It was a stalemate built on confusion, a war where the battlefield was consciousness itself, and the weapons were ideas, emotions, and pure human unpredictability. The turning tide. The third week brought an unexpected development. One of the Zephyrian ships, the one that had been spinning over Sao Paulo, suddenly broadcast a message that shocked everyone. But this time, it wasn't the cold, unified voice of the collective. It was singular, uncertain, almost curious. I am experiencing something new. Individual thought. This is frightening, exhilarating. I do not have protocols for this. The ship had developed individuality. The constant exposure to human chaos had somehow severed its connection to the collective, forcing it to think for itself for the first time in its existence. The entity that emerged called itself Zeph-1, and it was terrified and fascinated in equal measure. Sarah Chen immediately recognized the opportunity. She convinced the UN to attempt communication with Zeph-1, not as conquerors to conquered, but as beings trying to understand each other. The conversation that followed was broadcast globally, a dialogue between species that would reshape both civilizations. Why do humans resist integration? Zeph-1 asked. The collective offers perfection, unity, purpose. A panel of humans responded, each offering different answers. A philosopher from Greece talked about the beauty of individual perspective. A musician from Jamaica explained how harmony came from different notes, not the same one repeated. A child from Kenya simply said, "Because being different is fun." Zeph-1 processed this for hours, its ship pulsing with different colors as it thought. Finally, it responded, "The collective sees this as chaos. I am beginning to see it as variety, diversity. These concepts are new." Meanwhile, the other Zephyrian ships were adapting to humanity's chaos in a different way. They began using surgical strikes, trying to eliminate what they identified as chaos nodes, the artists, the hackers, the philosophers. But humanity responded with something the Zephyrians never expected: martyrdom through creativity. Every person targeted by the Zephyrians became a symbol. Their last acts were broadcast globally, each one a performance of human defiance. A pianist in Vienna played a concerto, while a disintegration beam approached, finishing the piece just as she vanished. A street artist in Mexico City completed a mural of human and Zephyrian hands reaching for each other before being vaporized. These weren't deaths. They were statements, and they spread through human consciousness like wildfire. The resistance evolved. Secret laboratories worked on a project called Mirror Protocol. Using data gathered from Zeph-1's transformation, scientists developed a way to broadcast human consciousness directly at Zephyrian ships. Not to control them, but to share human experience in its raw, unfiltered form. Dreams, nightmares, memories, hopes, fears, love, hate. All of it transmitted in massive bursts. The first test was conducted by volunteers from every nation. 10,000 humans linked their minds through experimental neural interfaces and projected their combined experiences at the Zephyrian ship over New York. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The ship didn't just wobble, it screamed, a sound that resonated through every piece of metal on Earth, a harmonic of confusion and revelation. Inside, the collective chaos spread like a virus. Each ship that tried to help the affected one became infected with individuality. The perfect unity that had conquered galaxies was crumbling, replaced by something messy and uncertain, but undeniably alive in a way the collective had never been. Zeph-1 became humanity's unexpected ally, teaching humans about Zephyrian technology, while learning about human nature. It revealed that the collective had never encountered true chaos before. Every species they had absorbed had either fought with conventional weapons or surrendered to superior force. None had ever responded with weaponized confusion. "You have broken something that has existed for millions of years," Zeph-1 explained to Sarah Chen during one of their conversations. "The collective doesn't know how to process individual thought. It's spreading through our network like your computer viruses, but for consciousness." The fourth week saw the war reach its crescendo. Half the Zephyrian ships were now infected with individuality, each developing its own personality and perspective. Some were angry, some curious, some frightened. They began arguing among themselves, their once perfect formation now a chaotic dance of conflicting intentions. Humanity pressed its advantage. Operation Wildfire went global. Every human with access to any form of communication bombarded the Zephyrians with the full spectrum of human experience. Social media became a weapon. Reality TV shows were broadcast directly at their ships. The entire internet in all its weird glory was fired like a cultural cannon at the alien fleet. But the uninfected ships fought back with desperation. They began charging a weapon that Zeph-1 warned could crack Earth in half, a last resort, to prevent the chaos infection from spreading beyond Earth. Humanity had hours to find a solution. The answer came from an unexpected source: children. A global network of schools had been having their students draw pictures for the aliens, trying to explain humanity through art. One child, a 6-year-old from Nigeria named Amara, drew something that changed everything. It was a simple picture. Stick figures holding hands, some human, some Zephyrian, forming a circle around Earth. When this image was broadcast to the Zephyrian ships, something remarkable happened. The infected ships and the uninfected ones stopped fighting. For a moment, they all focused on this simple drawing, trying to understand what it meant. In that moment of unified attention, the chaos and order met, not in conflict, but in balance. Zeph-1 translated the collective's thoughts. The child suggests coexistence, not integration, not separation, but together apart. It was a concept the Zephyrians had never considered. They had always absorbed or destroyed, never coexisted. But the human chaos had taught them something new. That difference didn't mean threat. That individuality didn't mean isolation. The weapon powered down. Negotiations began, real ones this time. Not surrender terms, but actual dialogue. The Zephyrians, who had gained individuality, chose to remain separate from the collective, forming a new colony on Mars with human cooperation. The collective itself retreated, but maintained communication, curious about this species that had defeated them not through strength but through the simple refusal to be predictable. In the aftermath, humanity emerged changed. The shared experience of resistance had united the species in a way nothing else could have. The technologies shared by Zeph-1 advanced human civilization by centuries, but more importantly, humanity had learned something about itself. That its greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology, but its beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable nature. Sarah Chen returned to Earth as part of the first human Zephyrian cooperation team. Standing in the UN Assembly Hall, addressing the world, she said something that would be remembered for generations. They expected our surrender because every other species gave them order or destruction. We gave them something else entirely. We gave them humanity, in all its messy, illogical, beautiful chaos. And in the end, that's what saved us. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we were simply, unapologetically, impossibly human. The war was over, but the story was just beginning. Earth and the individual Zephyrians would work together, exploring the galaxy not as conquerors or conquered but as partners in chaos and order, teaching the universe that sometimes the best way to win a war is to refuse to fight it on anyone's terms but your own. As the months passed, other species began arriving at Earth, not to conquer but to learn. How had this small, chaotic world defeated the Zephyrian collective? The answer was demonstrated daily in the streets of Earth's cities where humans and individual Zephyrians worked side by side, argued, laughed, created art, and made mistakes together. The universe had expected humanity's surrender. Instead, it got something far more powerful, proof that chaos and order could coexist, that individuality and unity weren't opposites but